for a bank and trust. I went to their website expecting to see something talking about the fact that they were handing out an 800 number. They talked about the general phishing information. It was helpful, but it didn't specifically say, do not call 800 numbers that you receive in emails. This should be standard practice. Everybody should update their standard phishing literature that they send out. It's not just websites that you need to be concerned with. It's 800 numbers, and it should also not simply talk about getting them in emails. It should talk about getting them anywhere where you wouldn't necessarily expect it, SMS, emails, on the back of the bathroom, wherever you're going. Monitoring users ANI. ANI is actually what is sent by the telephone company versus what caller ID information is. Caller ID might as well be, to do a comparison if you're not familiar with telecommunications, ANI would be the IP address and caller ID would be the DNS information. You can easily change the DNS information. It could link to 100 different things. As I'll say here, you can spoof the ANI. I think there was a presentation last year that talked about it. While it can be spoofed, it's much harder to spoof. I'm not saying that you should ever use caller ID information to be authenticating people, but it's a better number to look at. You should never use caller ID or ANI to actually authenticate the user. It's good on one half to ask for the last four digits of my credit card number, but you shouldn't be relying upon that caller ID information to be making any type of decision on a user. Additionally, you need to train call center reps on phishing. Ask callers what 800 number they dialed. When you call into the IVR system, instead of simply forwarding through, say you've reached bank X at this 800 number and you're calling from this telephone number. It can be very helpful to make sure that those two pieces link up, and if you're actually trying to do a man-in-the-middle attack, it won't necessarily make sense. And always say the name of the bank. If you go ahead and you do some research and you call a whole bunch of IVRs, you will see a lot of instances where they never actually say the bank name. And I understand with a number of branding products out there where one bank does 86 different banks, you don't necessarily want to say the name of the bank. It's cheaper to have 1-800 number handles multiple clients. But not saying the name of the bank opens you up to an even broader type of phishing attack. Prevent crossover knowledge. This actually goes back to the FFIEC guidance, which says you have to look at both what information you provide on your website once you log in, and it also talks about what information you have on your IVR as well that you have to look at. Looking at that crossover information, never ask for CVV2 information in an IVR. It just doesn't make sense. People should not be typing that in or keying that in. Never ask for the full social security number. Again, this is not something that you should ever be asking. If you're going to ask for the last four, that makes sense, but you shouldn't ask for the full social security number. Also go through and evaluate the information available when you successfully log into the IVR. What I'm talking about here is when you log in and you have your menu system, what are the menu options that are available? What information are you actually playing back to the user? Can you find out what their address is and their billing information is? Can you find out what the name, you can do check number 123 for $26, that's pretty innocuous. But we've gotten to the point where you can provide a wealth of information back to the user. Oh, the check was actually to your utility for this amount of money and it cleared on this date, and you can get a lot more information out of it. So evaluate what you're presenting back to the user. That is my presentation. I came up a little bit early, which gives me a lot of time for questions. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. It was actually hard to find a full-service provider that could do an 800 number, that could do the caller ID spoofing, that could do all those functionality. VoIPjet, I kind of picked best of breed. VoIPjet's great at outbound. They don't even have an inbound service. They let you spoof the caller ID. Sixtel, very easy to get DID numbers and 800 numbers. So I did that assuming that you'd want to move through this process in hours, not in days. You know, it really comes down to PayPal. A good majority of all of the voice over IP service providers are using PayPal. So if you can set up an anonymous account in PayPal and pay that bill, you can get the account information on those providers. I know VoIPjet recently went and said you had to be a verified use a verified account, because I believe that I'm totally speculating, but based upon that email going out, I'd be surprised if they're not getting some fraudulent transactions in there. So they are trying to reduce that, but you're really relying upon PayPal to regulate who is a verified user and transferring that money. If there are no other questions, oh, sorry. I heard a name back there, but I see a hand over there. You know, most of them have actually started to change how they're handling that. If you call some of the international numbers, they're changing the front ends of those to make sure that they're a little bit more accurate so this type of information comes through. Most banks are actually well aware of these types of issues. They're really trying to get ahead of the curve. Some of them were ahead of the curve on the standard phishing emails, and they're really trying to be more proactive and getting ahead of the curve on this type of attack. I believe that's actually why there's been so much publicity versus so few incidences, is because everybody really is trying to get ahead of the curve on this versus falling behind and having to react in a not as smooth manner. So I heard my way over there. But that was actually, I used the example, was off of Chase's website that had examples of phishing emails, and I changed where it had a bad link to my phone number. So I modified something that they provided. Well, I appreciate the time. I will be up here if you don't want to ask a question in front of everybody else. Thank you very much.